slowly start with just some introductions with everyone who's here, and then you can kind of get going, Mark. Just chatting about yourself and your background, and then we'll go into the Q&A after that. But yeah, if we want to get the introductions going, I'll start. So my name is Rachel Adams, and I'm the Marketing and Events Coordinator at the Startup Zone. And I'm really excited to hear from Mark today because this will be our first webinar that we've had during not really during COVID anymore. I guess maybe we can say post-COVID soon, but we're still in the midst of it, I guess. So this is the first workshop we've had in a while, kind of from a product development lens, which will be pretty interesting to hear your insights on everything that's happening right now. So I'm looking forward to that. Redden, if you want to introduce yourself.
Yeah, for sure. I'm Redden. I'm the services coordinator over at Startup Zone. Started full-time this week. It's just great and excited for phase 2 today.
We're all going to head to the mall after this.
Woo! Aaron.
Hi, Erin Rober. I'm the operations manager here at the Startup Zone. Y'all know me. It's all good to see. It's good to see y'all. I see Cecilia's here. Good to see you. Oh, there's Pat. Okay, sorry. I'll stop talking now. I'm rambling. Bye.
Thank you, Aaron. Pat, if you want to do your introduction.
Yeah, sorry, I don't know what's going on. I couldn't get into Zoom. Hey everyone, Pat Ferrara here, CEO of the Startup Zone. Seems like a digital startup zone as of late, but we're having lots of fun. We got some people back in the office today, and it's business as usual, as much as we can get it. All these terms I feel like I've heard so many times, and you could argue the opposite, but anyways, no, it's fun. It's fun to get back in and see people's faces and eyesight. What is it called? I guess, yeah, like all that fun stuff that we used to do pre-COVID.
Agreed. Cecilia, if you want to do your introduction real quick. Awesome. We can kind of come back. Oh, there you are. Hey.
Yeah, sorry. I was trying to find where to unmute this thing. I'm Cecilia, and I'm working at United Way, and I plan to have my own business one day, you know, when. So I'm just excited to be part of it and learn a little bit more. Yeah.
Cool. Thanks for coming out. Last but not least, Clark, if you want to take it away.
Yeah, hi, good morning. I'm Clark. I work in experience design and a bunch of other things related to product and I'm a quasi entrepreneur or an entrepreneur of sorts.
Well, thanks for coming out, Clark. Mark, we'll let you take it away now. We do have like 3 more people who are registered that aren't here yet, so we might see some more people come in slowly, and if you want to let them introduce themselves then, that's fine. But otherwise, I'll let you take it away. Yeah, I'm excited.
Well, thanks. It's nice to be invited. So thanks for the invitation to come and speak today. We can talk a little bit about me and my experience and sort of my how I got to where I am today. I've also prepared a little bit to talk about some product related subjects, because that's kind of my that's what I do. So I'd love to talk about product market fit and some of these big concepts that and how they boil down to actually practical kind of day-to-day work to kind of move your business forward. But really, we can talk about pretty much anything that the group is interested in. So my background is started in software development. I started as an engineer. So I was a Summerside kid and exited Summerside as quick as I could. Basically, at 17, I was off island and gone, and ended up in the late 90s. Ended up in Silicon Valley. So I had a computer science degree, and that was the place to be in the late 90s. It was the run up to Y2K, and it was the .com boom. So some of you guys remember that, and some of you don't. But that was the sort of the one of the gold rushes that happened, down there. That was a super interesting time to be introduced to kind of the entrepreneurial community and to the tech community as well. But I started down there with SAP, and if you know SAP, they're a massive German enterprise company. So, that time they had almost 10,000 employees. I don't even know where they are now, 60, 70,000 employees. In the time that I was there, they had 10,000 developers working for them. So that was kind of where I cut my teeth, is in that enterprise development environment where everything is very top down, very, like, it takes a lot of work just to project manage that many people in any direction. At SAP, I went from that kind of developer and software engineer role to a product management role with what they called their emerging solutions. So with a company that large, it's really tough to stay relevant. It's really tough to not get complacent and just keep making money the way you've always been making money, and that's how good companies die. So our job in this emerging solutions group was to look for emerging solutions, the next big thing. So it's sort of the entrepreneurial part of SAP, or was at the time. I think most large companies have a division like that. It could be a Skunkworks, or it could be like you think of Google and the ways that they try to stay relevant, and Facebook has one. Everybody has one. So that kind of got me interested in, or whet my appetite for, like, hey, there's more things happening down here than just making money selling to Fortune 500 companies. There was just a lot of cool stuff going on. So I left there and went to Salesforce at the time. So that was like mid 2000s. That's when Salesforce was reinventing the idea of software as a service. That the cloud got coined there. Mark Benioff was a master marketer and basically invented this category that we're all in the middle of. He gets credit for it. I'm happy to give him a bunch of credit, but it was a bunch of people who came up with those ideas. So that was also really fascinating group to be involved with because of all the things that were going on at the time. And the big thing I took away from them that when I get to product market fit was I worked with a few people, or at least sat next to a few people who were working on the tiering model and the pricing model, and just the whole idea of how do you sell software as a service and subscriptions in a way that people want to buy. And that kind of leads me into what I wanted to talk about today, which is product market fit, and not so much the product part of it, but the business model part of it, and how those two things are super connected. And you can't really have a successful business, no matter how good your product is, if you don't have a fit with them, if you're not selling in the way that people want to buy. So I find that a really interesting kind of entrepreneurial question. How do you find a business model that's going to fit with your product? Anyway, I went from there and came home and still had that appetite for entrepreneurial work, starting things from scratch. So I joined up with a local company here at the very beginning called Screenscape, if you guys know Screenscape. So I helped build that product from the ground up, and we made a really good run at it. So I was there for about 10, 11 years, through all the ups and downs of any new business, and learned a ton from those ups and downs. It's always a roller coaster, and it's one thing to say it, it's another one to live it, and kind of all the challenges that come from trying to stay relevant and pivot and all that stuff. So we did all that at Screenscape. And then at the end of this year, I left that role and joined up where I am right now. So I'm in our offices over on Kent Street with Cyber Island. So Cyber Island's a new security managed service provider here in Charlottetown, managed security services provider, doing a bunch of really exciting stuff, in my opinion. That's why I joined up. So I would also like to talk about some of the stuff that we're doing here today, in particular the product market fit that I think we found, or that we're working on right now, in terms of the advantages that we've got here on PEI, in terms of our people and our location, our cost base, our education base, the support from government, all the great things that we've got going on here, I think are like these key advantages that if you're working on a company and you're looking to differentiate and you're looking to kind of leverage your advantages, that PEI is a major, in my opinion, is a major advantage. And this is having come from Silicon Valley. I'd rather be here than Silicon Valley, obviously, because I came back. So I think there's a lot to be said for our location. We can pat ourselves in the back a little bit. So I'd love to talk also, if anybody's interested in ways that we can, why is that an advantage, and ways that small businesses could leverage that and market that as a key differentiator for their work. I guess I'll open the floor to questions, or please interrupt me at any time. I'm pretty good at just at going on, so I'll just keep talking about stuff until please somebody jump in. Chelsea, it's great to see you. If you want to introduce yourself to the group.
Hey, well, most of you guys know me. Yeah, it's nice to see you, Mark. I seen that you were chatting today, and I was like, oh, long time. Yeah, I would love to hear how you see how being here is better than the California life. I honestly think the same thing, but I would love to just hear your thoughts on that.
Yeah, cool. Well, yeah, let's talk a little bit more about that. I mean, I can do it in the context of what we're building here over at Cyber Island now. Having been down there and been in the mix, there's absolutely an advantage, cultural advantage, to just a networking advantage to knowing your neighbors, and you just run into people that are doing awesome stuff. And it's to me that is the key advantage to being down there. But it's also super expensive, super busy, super kind of mess with your head. You get caught up in trends, you get caught up in kind of other people's excitement about stuff rather than staying focused on your own thing. So people are pretty spastic and unfocused, and that was my experience. But why I think PEI is such an advantage is because we moved on from that. That was 20 years ago plus. This is super easy to do now. You can find a community, be connected, and know what's going on in a way that you couldn't in the late 90s or throughout the 2000s, really. So I think that networking advantage has kind of steadily just dropped. Even the co-location thing of everybody's working from home now. I was just reading this morning about how Facebook is kind of going along with Twitter and saying everybody can work from home forever. I think forever is the word that Twitter used. So what exactly is the advantage of being there then? Why would you pay $3, $4, $5 grand a month in rent just to work from home? And I tell you, it's you're going to pay $4 grand in rent for a place that you don't actually want to live. So it's the conditions aren't the best down there to begin with, unless you're uber rich. So I think that the networking advantage is kind of dropped. What we're leveraging here is this idea that here we are in North America with this really special kind of we're an island, that we're a little enclave. We've got access to, I think it's 14 different educational institutions in the 3 Atlantic provinces. There's a bunch of talented, smart people coming out of those all the time. They're hungry for work. We know how to work hard. We've just got this inbuilt. We're friendly. I don't know how else to say. We're culturally here. We know how to work with people. I don't know if that's I don't know what I'd give credit to that. I give credit to the ferries. I don't know how many of you guys are old enough to remember the ferry system, but I think our culture here is built up on everybody's equal, everybody's level. Nobody should get ahead of themselves. Nobody should think, from the CEO down to the janitor, everybody's respect. And I think that pervades that actually building a company on that basis and projecting that out to your customers is this superpower that we've got that a lot of companies you just don't get that anywhere else. So building on that and building on the smart people coming in that are super hungry and super engaged is I can't think of a better advantage if you're starting a company. Add that to the fact that if you do need expertise, you need to access the database administrator that has just got that special whatever that nobody here has that skill set. it's not that hard to find that person, and if it's the right opportunity for them, they'll work remote, and you bring them in for virtual capacity for either full time or 10 hours a week or whatever is you need, or as a gig. So all that stuff is just is kind of available to us now in a way that we can sit here comfortable with our great work-life balance and our great people, and build awesome stuff and project that out to the rest of the continent in a way that actually I think is as easy or easier than it is to do from anywhere else. So I love it. The advantage that we're looking to build here at Cyber Island is specifically around that resource, people, and the cost basis that we also have here, because it's cheap to live here, and the cost that you get for somebody of an equivalent skill set in Atlanta or in Boston or in Seattle is 40% on average higher than it is here. So you can find a fantastic person, then you throw in the exchange rate. So if you're offering a service, a remote service from PEI to somewhere else in on the continent, boy, do you have a killer advantage to take that to somebody and say, hey, I'm within an hour, I'm one time zone away, but I'm like an offshore cost. I'm the same cost that you get if you were trying to find the same expertise but overseas. That's again, from a business standpoint, can you name one other place in North America who's got that to offer? So any thoughts? Is there anyone else here in the group that's using that advantage in a particular way? Like you've got employees, or you've found some anecdote or some example in your own work that's where that's really paid off? Well, while we're pondering that, Matthew, thank you for joining. Nice to have you. If you want to introduce yourself to the group.
Great. Hi. Nice to meet you too. Yeah. So I'm a resident of the startup zone as well. So I build software, and we basically year 2 now. So building iPhone applications, and so more or less we kind of put out a few. We built 5 different apps and more or less MVPs, and just sort of seeing where we could get some traction. And now we're kind of honing in on 2 different apps and building those out. So yeah. So I'm more or less the product manager, but I'm, because it's kind of a smaller startup, I'm kind of doing a lot of things, UX and marketing and optimization, data analytics, just dabbling in a lot of things and just refining as we go kind of thing. So
sweet. So that's my definition of a product manager. You're kind of doing a little bit of everything and trying to hold it all together and keep everybody going in the same direction. Cool. Nice to have you.
Yeah, good to
Maybe
be here.
I'll just kind of leave those statements or those questions out there to the group. Jump in anytime. The topic that I thought when I was thinking about what am I going to talk about for an hour, or what could I focus our discussion on, the one that jumped out at me was product market fit. This idea of product market fit in a startup, and how do you know when it's time to like scale up and grow as a company. It's an idea that's been out there for a while. It's kind of like a venture capitalist idea that they push. So you've probably read, if you read any of that kind of literature, you've probably heard that term before. But I find it's one that's really easy to have a debate on or an open discussion on, because it's not one of those super well-defined things like, I know when I have product market fit because metric A and B and C. It's more of an art than it is a science. So there's room to talk about it. Is anybody familiar with that idea of product market fit? You you guys talk about that stuff at the startup zone? Are you kind of pushing those ideas?
All the time.
All the time, right now.
Yeah, like and I think a lot of people, I've got a customer, I've got product market fit, right? Like it's not, I see a lot of different definitions of product market fit, and often, I mean, I won't speak for you or anything, but like often people think it's product market fit, and it's like, no, you're not there yet, and it hasn't broken yet. So that's how I've heard some people describe product market fit. It's like if it breaks from using it so much, then you're on the right path, sort of thing. But
yeah. Cool. I'm gonna just on that note here, I'm gonna share my screen. So, could you enable my screen share there, Rachel?
Yeah, you should be able to just hit the green button down in the bottom middle.
I'm seeing a host disabled participant screen sharing, so I think I'm just a participant rather than a host.
Oh, 1 second. That hasn't happened before.
Yeah, Zoom created all these new rules.
Yeah,
new.
we always just use like the normal like default settings. 1 sec, I'm just looking through your options here. Do you even have the green button down there?
I do. It doesn't. It says no.
Can it send something to me to turn it on?
If you click on participants, you might be able to enable something under my name. There we go.
oh, there
I
you go.
just made you the host, yeah.
Sweet. Yeah, I mean, good for them. Frankly, they needed to do something. That's been with the security folks that I work with here at Cyber Island. That's been a topic of kind of debate around here. Is what am I sharing here? You guys see product market fit on your screen?
Yeah.
Okay, so just to your point there, Pat, lots of debate. I like this one in particular, like what is product market fit? It's basically that moment when there's a really widespread set of customers, and it's got to be wide. The market's got to be big, that they're all kind of looking for what you're selling. But I really think I define it this way. I like to break it down as not just like, hey, I'm the founder and I've found the market. I found my mission. I found the thing that the area where I really want to make an impact. And then I think what you're describing is product user fit. You found a person, you found a small group that are giving you good feedback, and you can iterate on the product. The part that I think is really tough, well, both of those are tough actually, but those are like achievable. But the really tough part is the business model fit and pulling that back into the product user fit, and like, how am I going to take this to market and sell it in a way where it's going to grow? It's going to find the key that'll unlock that major market that I've been so excited about. There's $1 billion of whatever, and my product's perfect for it, but no one's buying it because I don't have the right business model. I don't have the right way of kind of approaching those people. So I thought that would be interesting to talk about today. Yeah, and maybe exactly to your point there, Pat. Maybe we lost you there, but I think I totally agree with the statement. It's super easy to fool yourself into thinking you've got that fit when you don't yet. You really have to, I think, have the mind come at it from a scientific mindset and really try to divorce yourself from your emotional attachment to you want it to work, but you're a scientist, that you're testing a value hypothesis, and is the data there to support it, and not anything else. So it could very well be, and I think most scientists find their hypotheses that they put forward turn out not to be true, and it's the most interesting, exciting ones that often fail because they've leaned out there pretty far with a big idea, and it turns out that the data is just not there to support it. But they learn something as they find out the hypothesis is false. So I think really key is that back to that other slide. If you think you got product market fit, I can look really hard at that business model and how it is that you're going to approach the market, how it is you're going to sell, and not so much on you found you and your team are super passionate and talented, or you built an MVP and it works, and you found people who are giving you great feedback on it. Just as important is combining that with business model. I also really like this one in that speed, I think, is super overrated. You'll totally, like, if you don't have that PMF, that product market fit, you're not gonna, it doesn't matter how fast you are. And there's a ton of examples. I think all the major examples out there, the major monopolistic players right now, the Facebooks and Googles and all that, none of them were first in their market. Not that anyone really, not that we're in in an exercise where we think we're going to be the next Google, but it's important to recognize that you can be super successful and not be first. You just need to be first with product market fit. So don't rush out there with like the first glimmer of success. Try to really be deliberate about assessing whether or not you've got the right thing in your hand before you take it out. And it's an art, not a science, really. So the same guy, I'd like to look at this as a question of value hypothesis and growth hypothesis. Like pretend you're a scientist, go back to school and look at that scientific method and the way that you test an idea, or you put forward a question out there in the market. Find really reliable ways of testing it. Look first at value, and that's kind of the big part of the product market fit. But then once you've got that, you need some way of growing the thing. You need some way of selling it. So you've got a theory that you're also going to put forward and say, I wonder if this is the right way to approach the market. And you test that hypothesis rigorously, allowing it to fail when it's not true, and iterate. So this is what I actually want to talk about today, because this is sort of my as we move forward, and as I move forward in my career, you learn a ton of new stuff year after year after year. And this I learned, I discovered this a few years ago, 3 years ago, and it was like one of those, like, you could hear the click. Yeah, that's it. You guys have got it. That's perfect. I love it. So if you've never seen this before, I hope you have. If you haven't, this is to me a really solid, systematic way of taking whatever application you're building. If you happen to be building a software application, perfect. But any service or product you're taking out there, I think you can apply this model. And the idea is that you break down, this is for the growth hypothesis or the growth stage, once you've found like value that your customers are indicating to you. How do you go out there and create these evaluators, like get people to try out your product? Just find some way to get people to try out your product. And once you lock that in, that's the kind of the start of your journey. Then you're like, okay, I've defined who my evaluators are. I want them to convert. I want them to activate and actually go from kicking tires to being newbies in my product. I'm gonna forget about all the rest. I'm just like, how do I get the most raw beginner to become a regular, to log in every day, or to use the product every day, or whatever your metric is, and really adopt and become a regular. And then like blinders on again. Okay, you're a regular. You know how to use it. I'm not educating you anymore. You're not. How do I get you to really love it and become a champion of it? How do I get you to take my message out to other people and advocate for me so that I get more evaluators? So they call this the PLG flywheel, the product-led growth flywheel. So once you kind of get that momentum going, it's the inertia of the process feeds into itself. But what I love about it is that you can break down the problem kind of very scientifically, very computer science. Like I'm just going to chop this up into discrete methods, and I'm going to solve the input-output question for each of these methods, and knock out the problems one by one, rather than just trying to solve the whole thing in one blob. So I found this to be a really productive way of approaching that growth question of like, how am I, now that people have found me, how am I going to grow this thing and keep it moving? And you can see, if you think about products that you use out there that are really successful, you'll find this in every single one of them. This has been very well proven out there in the market, and there's tools that you can just literally just plug into your product to get these things to hit each one of these stages and each one of these kind of adoption actions one by one. So I love this for startups. I think we should all be learning this in school. And I'll just stop share there now so we can all chat about that. Has anybody else seen that PLG kind of flywheel?
Nope.
Check it out. It's really awesome. I've used a couple products that have that kind of baked into them. They're essentially they're an evolution of a lot of the kind of the WalkMe type products out there that are like, whenever you're a beginner in a product, you get those pop-ups and they say, let me show you this, and then let me show you that, and let me show you the little button over here, and you can click it off. They're like an evolution of that, where at every stage there's some of those pop-ups, but there's also maybe an email, or maybe somebody from the company is reaching out to you to get you to take a session with them so you can engage a little bit more. But what they're really trying to do is get you to go from evaluator to beginner, or beginner to regular. And they've systematized it in a way that you don't have to think too hard about. You're just like, oh crap, I don't have a door action for my regulars to become champions. I need to like fill in that blank. And then you just test. You just look at the metrics, and they're really good at helping you set goals for each of those, and adoption metrics that you can, benchmarks that you can measure yourself against to say, yeah, okay, yeah, the funnel here, or I should be getting at least 20% of my users going from here to here, or my NPS score for my regulars should be, at this level and not that level. So that's something to work on. It gives your marketing team, it gives your product and UX team really clear daily to-dos that I've found to be super, super useful.
Can I go ahead, Pat?
No, go for it.
Yeah, can we jump in with questions? I guess with my first question.
I go.
Yeah, so I was wondering if you could elaborate on that, because so this is something that I was actually it's good timing, because I was thinking about exactly this, and you actually have the wording and the framework now that I can look into. So I was wondering if you could talk more about what those data points look like in each stage. So for instance, the evaluators, we want them to go through all the onboarding stages and see them, whatever, test out at least 3 times or whatever. And then the beginners, what are they doing? So can you kind of just break down a bit more what those metrics are? So it's like usage, it's converting to the paid version, let's just say, would be the regulars, and then if they renew twice, then they become champions. So I don't know, can you kind of break down what the critical ones at each stage, and what the key problems maybe you've seen at each stage and how to improve them?
Absolutely. I'll share it again just because it's the visual is it's going to be different for every application and every group. The challenge we had, and I can give some to the degree that is appropriate, I'll share kind of our experience over at Screenscape. It's the metrics or the milestones, and really to me it's about milestones more than the metrics just tell you when somebody's reached a milestone. I like metrics, you need to quantify, but I think you can kind of get caught up in the numbers a little bit. And I've found that early on, you don't have, like, scientifically, you don't have a big enough data set to get too concerned about like your percentages going up to like your NPS score when you've only got 1,000 users. It's going to be dragged up and down, because 1,000 users, you're only NPS. You guys know, like, Net Promoter Score, those little pop-ups where you'll see in a product that says, "Give me a score 1 to 10." Are you enjoying this application? 1 to 10. That's a standard thing called the Net Promoter Score, which you use to evaluate whether or not people like your app. Essentially, whether or not they're going to be a champion or a detractor. So that statistic, that number or metric is useful, but it becomes statistically questionable if you got 1,000 users and you're only polling 100 of them, on any given week, and that means that one person who gives you a 0 is dragging your average down, dramatically. So you might have a specific challenge with that one user that's worth talking to them or using it, but as a metric, it's like, So I'd rather focus on the milestones that people are hitting. Like, you can kind of use the metric as a way of saying, okay, well, this person's logged in. After they've logged in 100 times, I'm going to call them a regular. I just kind of just picked a number on something that makes sense for my application. So back at Screenscape, our challenge was that we had a physical aspect to our users and our deployment. You had to actually take the device that we sent you. This is digital signage that Screenscape does. You're plugging that into a TV, and it's got to activate. It's a little computer that's in the back of the TV that makes the TV a digital sign. So there was an activation event there that was a really clear signal to me as the product guy that, okay, they're at a different stage now. They've the light has literally come on, and I can talk to them in a different way about their next steps. So if you've got some application or some product, you're going to want to find a key that people are going through for each one of these that makes sense for your. I can hear someone talking, but just it's very quiet.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. So you kind of map out what your user journey is, your customer journey, and you kind of map out those milestones, and it doesn't necessarily need to be scientific, but you can more or less know if they're logging in, if they're, did they complete one cycle, are they regularly logging in and doing, so then you can sort of assess how you can get them to do that more. So no, that makes sense.
Yeah. So there's tools out there that'll help you too, that'll give you a ton of metrics, that'll kind of give you an insight. Like we used one that I'm such a fan of, called Full Story. If you check out this app called Full Story, it's a little scary because you realize what application developers can do in terms of watching your sessions and learning from your sessions. But this is basically they're recording every action that you're making in a web application, in the DOM, in the structure of the page, and every motion of the. From a UX perspective, it's awesome, but then there's you realize what you can actually record. It's literally like a video recording of every user who's ever used your application that you can drop in at any point and see, oh, they hesitated here over this button and then they went over to that button. That's a problem with, let me try an A/B variant where that button's a different color, or that button has a different word on it, or that button has a, whatever. So from a UX standpoint, it's super useful. But I found it really useful for this PLG thing too, where it'll essentially hand you some metrics where you can just see that, okay, like I can log in and see what Matthew has done today, and he's gone over this, in this graph, he just crossed my arbitrary line, somewhat arbitrary line that I drew for the difference between a beginner and a regular. So I'm going to call him now. I'm going to tag his user with regular, and when I compile my stats for how am I doing in my regular cohort, I can you're now part of it.
Right. No, that's great.
The thing that I get interested in this, and I'm always looking for ways to apply generalized specifics. Part of my background, I was a philosophy student, so I like generalizations. I like to take these and apply them to other things. So I think this applies, like, even if you're not like a SaaS model software startup, I think this has a lot of general application to any new business. Like, I just can't think of like a restaurant, for example. You started up a food truck or something. It's like, okay, you've got evaluators. You got people who are trying your a taco, and they want to see if they like it or not. And are they going to become they're going to come by every Monday? Are they going to come by every day for lunch? Are they telling other people about your product? Well, you can map out exactly how do you learn about those customers, what's keeping them coming back and turning them from somebody who's just walked by and thought they'd try it to like a champion who just can't stop talking about how good those tacos are. Like that, I think it applies to any business.
Yeah, it's interesting. It reminds me of, I'm sort of obsessed on this on the sales side of things. So, crossing the chasm is something I stand by closely in terms of like a sales perspective. And so you're kind of looking at it, it's sort of like a framework like this, and you sort of have these 4 different stages, and you have different, they almost profile each stage, right? Which is kind of what you're doing here, and everyone sort of has different needs, they can shift. And so how do you market to that group? And so it's interesting to see this on the product end too. And it's like blowing my mind, but it makes complete sense. You got to have, it's full picture, not just for sales, product, but marketing, team, everything. So
I think that's actually where this came from, was like the CRM sales funnel idea. And as people started using more of those marketing concepts and, with AdWords and all that, and the really refining those funnels to like the finest degree, the UX people started looking at it and saying, well, that's great and all, but actually we need to be doing this, after we acquire them. We need to be refining, or, and so that, I think that's exactly where how it evolved.
Like a deeper dive. Yeah. It's awesome. And I like the milestones thing. I think, we, how many programs we run, and we focus so hard on metrics, but then sometimes you lose track of that overarching goal. And so there's this, balance between metrics and milestones. And I think that's completely true in ensuring that your milestones are aligned, especially in the early days.
Yeah. And this is, it's the early days that I'm always kind of, I get excited about. There's something that once a company comes to a certain size, like we got their Salesforce, where it's like, okay, I'm not that into it anymore. Like, we're making money, but it's just too big. Like, I can't quite can't get my fingers dirty, so I don't want to play anymore. I think that the challenge is that when you're early, you don't have enough data. You're just missing out on the volume that you need to make proper projections about what's going to happen. There's this inbuilt advantage to a Facebook where they're just like, they can statistically they can kill it because they've got the numbers. So how do you use this in a way that's like super effective when you've only got 20 customers is different. This is one that I thought, if we've got a couple people who are building apps today and doing stuff, I find this quote to be one where if you're an engineer versus, like, this is the classic engineer versus product manager debate, where if you believe in this product-led growth idea, where like we don't actually know yet who our customer is. We'd be fools to say in advance that we know exactly the problem that we're looking to solve, and we're just gonna write a spec doc and build the best thing that we can because we already know what our market is. This PLG idea says that we don't know that, and we'd be fools to sort of assume at the outset that in the absence of any real data, any real world data, we already know the answer. That's kind of an arrogant statement to make, and probably false. But from an engineering standpoint, so that's a product point of view, but the engineers really want to have a specific spec, and they really don't want to build something twice or 3 times or 5 times. So they want to build it, they want to harden it or build it in the best way possible the first time so they can move on to the next feature that you're asking for. And I think from an entrepreneurial standpoint too, there's this constant question of how minimal is my MVP? like how crappy can it be for, you know, like it's like paper thin for me to still get proper data that I'm getting, like it, to answer the questions, the hypothesis that I'm trying to answer. From an engineering standpoint, that's the wrong way to build things. They're gonna argue all day long that no, you're an idiot. I'm gonna spend 2 weeks building this now, and then in 3 months you're gonna come back to me and tell me to rip it all apart and spend, you know, a month doing it all again. Why don't I just take 3 weeks now and build it? So I think it's a really it's one of those challenging dichotomies because there isn't a right answer. It is situational, and I'd say this from a product management point of view or from an entrepreneurial point of view. When you are your own product manager, this is a really tough one that you're going to have to answer every time. Am I in the phase? Sorry, Kent Street. Am I in a phase where what I'm really trying to do is answer my value hypothesis, and I'm not trying to build a growth product where, like, I already know that I have product market fit, I already know how I'm going to take it to market, and I just need to build the best thing possible that will last for years. Where am I in that cycle will help you answer this particular question. But the better your engineers, the more you're going to get pushback on this question, because the better engineers, the more they know from their experience that building something poorly the first time sucks, and you don't want to do that. It's not professional. So they're going to want to spend 3 weeks on it when you want them to spend 3 days on it. Anybody run into that problem before, where there's that kind of push-pull between what you need as a product person or an entrepreneur and what your engineers need as professional builders?
Yeah, I must say I'm relieved to hear it, because I I guess I'm not the only one, because I'm pushing for product and like, hey, well, why are we doing this? We don't know what the customer needs, and it's like, no, let's build more features, and like, well, no, but why? You know, so this is good to hear that I'm, you know, that this is actually a thing and I'm not crazy. So I feel good.
Yeah. You will feel crazy though. We have to stick together, because usually the product person is the only product person. Often the product person is the only one in the room. So you need, you know, you're kind of a voice in the wilderness. But I think UX is also kind of experiences that in different ways. So yeah, go back to, I found this PLG concept to be really useful, and I found that value hypothesis, especially because it's sort of scientific-y, you know, as a term, value hypothesis and growth hypothesis. And if you can kind of briefly explain that, no, we're in a mode here where we're testing our value hypothesis. I get it. It's frustrating that you don't have like a detailed spec blueprint to build from. It's not where we are in the stage of the company. We need to prove this hypothesis first and iterate on that. And the faster we do that, the more cash we're saving and the longer our runway is. So that's the game, is to test out those two hypotheses as fast as possible with as little investment as possible, or the lightweight investment as possible, so that you can get to the later growth stage.
Yeah. So on that point, from a SaaS perspective, would you say something like, this is kind of how I break it down? It's like, get the downloads. That's kind of like your marketing and that side. And then once they've downloaded, get them to get a free trial. And then from free trial to paid user, and then from paid user to regular to champion. Would that be a good breakdown? And then you can measure, you can actually see how many go from 1 to 1. Then, because what we're doing now is we're going downloads, free trial, users, but that's not a complete enough picture in my view. So if you say paid users to regulars to champions, that kind of breaks down those users into three categories. So do you think that's a good division, or would you add?
Absolutely, yeah, that's the way you got to do it, and then find ways to tools that you can employ in the same way that your web marketer is looking at the sales funnel on the web page and seeing where people are dropping off, and seeing what the conversion rates are on this landing page, and people aren't re-engaging because XYZ A/B test. Do all that in your product. to the extent that you can. And there's tools out there that will essentially automate that for you, or like, you know, put it on rails, maybe is a better term. So then you can actually refine each one of your actions at each one of those kind of steps as people are moving across. And just like the marketer is changing the language on a buy now button to enroll now or whatever, and they're seeing a 7% difference in conversion rates because of, you know, that change in language, you're doing the same thing in your product to convince people that you need to go from beginner regular because XYZ. And what I love about these topics is once you see it, you can't unsee it, and then you start seeing, like, just pay attention to all the products, all the digital products you're using today, and you'll start noticing how they do this. You'll start noticing how that new app that you signed up for that keeps bugging you every second day with like, hey, check this out, or like, hey, you know, they've got you pegged at a certain category, and they're trying to get you to hit a milestone, and you start to you learn from it. It's just like anything else. Once you can kind of see the gears, you're like, I like how they did that. I don't like how they did that. I think they're, here's where I would do that differently.
Perfect. Yeah.
Yeah, Chris Dixon. We can skip that one. That's really about. Skip that one. I don't know if you guys know Chris Dixon. I like him, but he's a little he's special. And all these names and stuff, like, if you're interested in this topic, these are all well-established authors or like luminaries on these topics, and they're pretty easy reading. They blog about this stuff, or you go to, like, I really like Ben Horowitz, or like any of that crew. You can do an hour or two of reading and get inspired by just the way that they've broken down the problem into smaller steps that you can knock out. I'll share this at the end of the session. You just pull the names off, and you'll find these quotes. These are all like famous quotes from these people, and you can just kind of dig in from there. Clark, you mentioned that you were you're coming at things from a user experience side of things. How does this jive with kind of the science that you folks apply?
Well, most of my career, I tried to stay away from the product managers and the business group and in general. And I always found the engineers to be a little bit like being at the CDP. They're like racehorses, and they're dying to leave the gate as quickly as possible and develop all the features all at once. And I was sort of depending on the product manager, I would be the one sort of trying to rein them in and pull them back and say, well, no, we don't have any data. We don't have any customer research. With nothing yet. We don't know what. We just have a CEO with an idea. And we need to do some research first so that we can make the correct first or better informed first decisions. So, but most of what you're saying sort of seems to jive with what my experiences said.
I think that might be because I think what's happened is, product manager is a pretty broad term. I think for this style of product management, it's UX that's sort of influenced and bled into the way of looking at things. So it's like, hey, you guys are right, actually. Let's do it this way. But we're going to apply sort of a business strategy element to it, in addition to kind of user joy. There's going to be that business model angle to it to achieve the goals that we're getting from the CEO.
I think probably the biggest mistake that I made, I was often responsible for training and helping younger members of our team. And I think the biggest mistake I made was that at the beginning, we tended to always focus on psychology and, okay, we're going to study psychology. We're going to make sure that most designers on our team would come from a master's degree background, so they'd understand method. But we then would focus on code. There's a designers need to code movement years ago. And I think the greatest mistake we made was that we didn't focus on business. And many of us, myself included, have a very, very poor understanding of business and product management as applied to product management in general. So one of the things I've been asking sort of our coaches and things here, if there's any, I always get a book list and reading that I can distill, read myself and distill to others who I might be working with in the future to kind of give them an education. And I'm wondering if there's any kind of things other than blogs and things like that that you would recommend, or?
Yeah, well, there's several of these books, like the Lean Startup is there, pretty small.
Right.
I think Crossing the Chasm is a good one. There is a little lexicon here that you could apply. I like that idea though, that providing the book list to a new team. I just ran across an idea a couple of weeks ago from a fellow that we were sort of interviewing for our own education here, just trying to figure out the market here at Summer Island. And he's got what he calls, this is a little aggressive, but his name is Frank, so he's got the Book of Frank. And he basically has this book of like, here's all the ways that I work. And when you work, he's fairly high up at one of the big consulting companies. So if you want to work with Frank, here's literally like, here's the font that he wants you to use and the documents that you write for him and that. And maybe a lesser version of that, which is just like, hey, we're going to be working together and spending a ton of time on this shared project. It would be useful to understand each other in a way that's a little more robust than just the coffee talk. So here's my background, and almost like a CV, but from like a project standpoint. That was my takeaway from him. Like, all right, I'm not going to tell people what font to use, but maybe it would be really useful to have a page there. Like, here's the books that I found super influential, and some of the quotes and ideas. And you'll get into my head a little bit, and the next time we collaborate, you'll understand where I'm coming from. And if everybody had one of those, and we all read each other's Book of Frank, before we kicked off the project, that'd be kind of awesome. Well, I see that unfortunately, we lost Chelsea there in a little bit. And any other topics that you guys would like to chat about? PEI, COVID. Oh, one thing I wanted to mention to the group, if any of you guys haven't taken advantage of it yet, is some of the funding that's coming around COVID and some of these different ways that we can kind of tap into what the province is doing, the feds are doing. We're offering here at Cyber Island basically to pay for 100% if you haven't accessed the funding yet, but ways of hardening your own cloud kind of practice from a cyber standpoint so that you're not at risk. There's some really scary stats out there about what's going on in terms of phishing attacks, et cetera, that people are using now that everyone's working from home. And so there's some standard ways of kind of hardening your business against those, like here's three things you can do to like reduce your risk by 85%. Super useful. So I can share that link with you guys too, and just if you haven't taken advantage of that funding, either use it for that or something else, because it's $2,500, 100%. You can access a consultant through, I think it's Innovation PEI that's offering it. We've also been in a lot of conversations with the CBDC, and they're offering, they have a standing offer of like consulting services, 75% covered. I'm sure you guys, Startup Zone, have lots of information on stuff to access on that front. But I can't stress enough. I've had the last couple months here, and it's one of those like you look under the rock and you start looking at things from the inside of like cybersecurity, and you're like, holy crap, okay, I got to change the way I work at home. Start being a little more conscious of how I do things. So I think we all should, and it's from a business standpoint, it's heartbreaking to see companies like literally fold because they made one bad click, and then they get the ransomware attack and they can't afford it and they just go under. And the numbers are higher than I thought. At least one in 5 companies are getting hit. 1 in 3 of those companies are reporting that the fiscal damage is greater than $100,000.
Oh.
Like done.
Wow.
That's just reported, right? Wow.
And most of them don't report.
Right.
Because for obvious reasons.
Yeah. I mean, we've heard of the Zoom bombing, and people have been traumatized from Zoom bombing. And it's not like a particular type of person, right? It's like all age groups and some like the school Zoom bombing stuff. And it's just kind of like brutal. So you got to stay protected. Also, Mark, yeah, so just to reiterate that the 2,500, I think what I just heard in the past 24 hours is they've actually upped that to 3,500. I don't know if anyone else can confirm that on this call, but that is something we heard. So whether you have gotten it already and want to up it another 1,000 or haven't gotten it yet, it looks like it might be 3,500. And so they've just increased. Oh, is that note? Did you see something there, Rachel? Subject to availability, deadline is June 1st.
Yeah, I saw that they were updating the budget from 25 million to 35 million, subject to availability. So I don't know if like the general budget is increased or if it's like for individual basis or not.
2.5 to 3.5 million?
Yeah.
Right, yeah. Oh, that's what it was. Sorry, yes. Okay, yeah, no, it wasn't up. Yeah, my mistake. Okay, so they've just increased the, not the amount you can get, but the overall budget. That makes sense. So there's another mill out there if you haven't gotten it already.
I like seeing, I've been very heartened to see the degree to which all those different organizations are like, it's just real people kind of looking for ways to help. So it's nice to see. It's another strength that we got here. PEI, I think the community is just so tight. People are willing to back each other up.
Mark, can you speak again to the Cyber Island thing with CBDC? Like, I think I saw something. Are you guys doing like a coalition with a couple different groups?
Yeah, there's a few companies, Cyber Island, Cyber Force, Rogue Security, which is like a small business focused security group, Bulletproof, which is out of, I think they're out of Fredericton, but they're sort of the more established company.
Right.
Working with the CBDC to offer these services out there that essentially you just need to sign up and it's paid for. And there'll be some education sessions for employees because the number one way that people get in, that hackers get in, is through phishing attacks. It's like 90% or something, where they trick your employees into giving, to logging in to the false page, and now they've got access, and now they can install or whatever, and they level up until they can lock down your systems and send you a nasty email that says pay me or I hit delete. It's easy money from their point of view. So just ways but there's also easy ways of protecting yourself from that if you do them. So that's nice. Anyway, so CBDC is organizing it. The 100% coverage is coming through its Innovation PEI. There's a provincial program that's being run by Innovation PEI that's covering 100% of up to $2,500. And the CBDC has said, look, if you've already accessed that and you still need or want these services. They have a standing consulting advisory service that they will invoke, and that covers 75% of the cost. So there's to be some cost, but at a steep discount.
Nice. Okay. Yeah, you're definitely going to see a lot more attacks. Something happened this week. My whole team got phishing emails about, hey, it's Pat Farrar. Are you busy right now, or whatever that is? And you're just like, oh man, there's really nothing. We reported and everything, but they're out there and they're just bots running.
Yep.
Billions of.
They're scraping your about page and they're finding out that who the leadership team is, and then they just start banging emails, and it's again there's some pretty standard ways of protecting against it, but MFA and things like multi-factor authentication on your systems. And even if you do trick somebody into doing that, there's a second layer where it's a lot harder for them to get admin privileges, those sorts of things. So this program that CBC is sponsoring or is organizing would be 5 education sessions for your employees and for your network people to take to, okay, what are the standard steps? Let's walk you through them. Let's make it really easy. Let's how do you move to the cloud in a way that's safe? How do you have remote employees and working on their own machines in a way that's not they're not putting your organization at risk because they have some kind of spyware on their home machine, and then they're using admin privileges to get into your AWS, your cloud, your production cloud, from home, and suddenly that the person watching is like, okay, then thanks, I can shut down your business now. That kind of stuff. So those sessions, there'll be a summit in the fall with basically all the participants, and the RCMP will be there, and different organizations to talk about ways as a community that we can work with each other to make the cyber community a safer place around here, and then a couple other items in there. So I'll share the website with you guys.
Nice. Yeah, I saw the province even had something going on, didn't they? There was like some ransomware going on there. Hopefully you guys are helping them out.
There was some discussion there, and I wasn't directly a part of it, but yeah, they did reach out, and yeah, nobody's immune, right?
Oh.
And it's a moral problem too, because you're dealing with the people who are asking you for money. It's like, okay, do I give money to people who are not good people and are not going to do good things with what they're getting, or do I let them tank my business that I've just spent my life's blood, working on? Like, what a terrible position to be put in. Like, how can we avoid anyone being put in that position? And actually, it's pretty easy to avoid. So I want to keep. I've kind of got I've drank the Kool-Aid here, and I really think it's so necessary for us all to just do the basics and
Yeah, we had a company, our equivalent in Ontario was running a session, and they were doing a Zoom. They had it set up no differently than us. Like, we could even get hacked right now. But they actually, what had happened was they had all the protections, all the passwords, and they had actually hacked through Zoom. So it wasn't even through the organization itself. It was actually like the back end through Zoom, and there was nothing they could do to prevent it. So. Yeah, there's always going to be new ways, right? It's never going to really end.
Exactly. So you've got to find those kind of choke points and lock it down. Like MFA is like the easiest, absolutely easiest. If you're not using it today for your own knowledge, just install and use it. It's kind of annoying because you're getting these texts on your phone that you've got to enter in a second number, but that's like a pretty awesome way of just, I know. Yeah. So it's convenience against. It's right. Like it's an extra lock on your door. If you're living in a bad neighborhood, and we're all living, frankly, in a bad neighborhood, put an extra lock on your door, and you got to find that second key and open the door that way. But it'll stop some pretty terrible things from happening. So. Well, listen, thanks everybody for joining. I really appreciate the conversation and your attention and participation.
Thanks, Mark. Yeah, we'll have to look at doing some other activities with you, maybe on the cybersecurity piece. We'll see what that looks like in the coming weeks.
Yeah, we're here now. We're gonna be pretty aggressive. Yeah, expect to hear more from Cyber Island, I guess. And I expect to see a lot more cyber kind of related activity in Charlottetown. I think there's a whole new sector that's going to open up here.
Are you in the office now too, Mark? You look like you're on Kent Street.
Yeah, I'm at the old post office on Kent Street. Yeah,
Nice. Okay.
The old Kettleback.
Yeah, you guys are by the what is it? There's that Canadian Justice Network. Are you guys with that?
We're literally right next door to the, like, there's Suite 201. We're Suite 202.
Sweet. You go to AJ's a lot. AJ's Startup Zone.
Yeah. He just started up, so yeah, it's nice to see them. They took over the old Kettleback spot.
Yeah. And they're bumping, so great to see that stuff. But no, appreciate it, Mark. Thank you so much.
Thanks, guys.
And
Yeah, thanks a bunch.
If people want to reach out to you, I don't know if you want to share your email or what would be the secure idea.
The best way is through my email here. So it's just my name, mark.sambrooke@cyberislandglobal.com.
And you're also on our Slack as well, right?
Yeah, you can get to me through Slack, and probably there's some other ways through Aaron or Rachel through if you want to talk on the legit side, we can set up a session and all that.
Sweet. Thanks, Mark.
Thanks, guys. Nice to meet you all.
Appreciate it. Thank you so much.
Take care.